Hello, I'm going to have another bash at Martin Bashir, and I have to be quite clear about this. This is not out of any personal vendetta to do with Bashir himself, even though I have come to the conclusion that the man is a horrible little toad who shouldn't be running a telephone answering service, let alone any branch of broadcasting. Oh, and I want to remind you that Martin Bashir is currently, so far as I know, head of religious broadcasting at the BBC, which should give you an idea of what they think of religious broadcasting. But if you're watching this in another place than the UK, carry on watching, because although you might not know Martin Bashir, you will know his type. First of all, I want to say there are many dreadful human beings, inadequate human beings, who aren't even particularly good at their jobs, and we let them carry on with hardly a comment. Because, to misquote Hamlet, if we're all treated according to what we really deserve, who among us would escape a whipping? And these guys need to put food on the table just like everyone else. No, I'm having a go at Bashir not because of who he is, but of what he represents. I have, on at least 4 occasions I can think of, and probably more, warned friends or colleagues not to involve themselves with the mass media, not to allow themselves to be interviewed, not to give them stories. And for this reason, and I've seen it happening, to the mass media, human beings are stuff. People are the material out of which programs are made. The most extreme example, of course, is something like Jeremy Kyle over here. I'm sure that format is known all over the world. It's a TV interviewer who gets someone with a problem, sometimes a really, really serious problem, and gets them to spill their guts on the public air, often with antagonistic relatives and aggressive neighbours telling everyone that they have a completely different take on the story that's being given by the main narrator. The more antagonistic, the better. Great TV, as the producers say. It all makes great TV or great radio or whatever. And by saying such programmes encourage troubled people to spill their guts, that's exactly what I do mean. Kyle's show was cancelled after a very troubled individual killed himself, having got the wrong information on air and in full sight of the entire great British public. But people are just material to the producers. If you buy a bolt of material, you don't bother asking it whether it wants to be a coat or a pair of trousers. You don't consult it about the angle at which you cut it. You don't ask it if it would prefer to be worn in summer or winter. You look at the material and you make what you want out of it. And people are just material to the producers, the directors, the camera operators, the lighting engineers, everyone in those studios. In general, you see, you've got to understand they have a job to do. And they are under constant pressure to do that job. Look, sometimes I make just 2 videos in a week. Sometimes it's 3 if something really grabs my attention. Occasionally it's been 4. But I produce them only when I feel there's something to say. The problem with running a TV or a radio show is that people switch that set on at 8 o'clock every evening or at 9 o'clock on Wednesday night or whatever, and they don't expect someone to come on air and say, "Sorry, I was totally uninspired this week, and in any case, I couldn't find anyone suicidal enough to interview, and so here's an hour of me listening to Beethoven." You know, you see the little problem. All those lighting engineers waiting for a job to do, and those directors and all those young women fresh out of their media courses buzzing around with their clipboards trying to look like they're earning their salaries, they all need stuff to put on air. And after a while they forget that this stuff has a heart and a soul, emotions and families and neighbours who'll look at them askance for months afterwards, or suddenly go silent in the pub when they walk in of an evening. Obviously, the sort of media people who see other people not as stuff, well, they usually can't keep up the pace. One of the biggest problems I had while working at the Beeb was when another scriptwriter wrote a dreadful, slanderous, vicious script about a group of people involved in the news. It was totally skewed. It was a funny script, and the producer put it on. Now, I asked him later, "Why did you do that? It wasn't right." And he said, "Well, maybe it wasn't, but it got people talking, didn't it?" That was the way he justified himself. And I went to that producer who put it on, and I said what had been done was immoral. I have to tell you, I didn't last much longer in that department. Okay, so back to Bashir, the upmarket Jeremy Kyle, who got a fragile, troubled princess to spill her guts on national television, Martin Bashir, so that he could use her as stuff. Well, at least he was polite to her, because she was royal. So he treated her with a normal level, with what we would expect to be a normal level of consideration, even though he was interviewing her under false pretenses. But as for the proles, well, they didn't fare so well. Apparently, it's come out now that Bashir had this idea of making a show, and believe me, he would have thought of it as a show, not a programme, a show about the murder of 2 children. This is what happened. One of the little girls was called Karen Hadaway. She and another child were found murdered in 1986, and there had been little progress with the case. And then in 1991, Bashir contacted the Hadaway family saying that he wanted to do a documentary. And he offered the bereaved and the heartbroken and grieving parents who could see no progress in finding the evil monster who had deprived them of a beautiful little girl. He offered them a ray of hope. He said if they could give him some of their daughter's clothing, he would have it tested for DNA samples. The show was never made. That happens. That's not necessarily Bashir's fault. But what is his fault is he never got back to the parents, the family. He never returned the child's clothes, and he never did the DNA tests. In 2004, when the police contacted Bashir to ask for the clothes back, because obviously they'd gone to the parents and asked them, and then the parents said they gave it to Martin Bashir, it says here Mr. Bashir, who was working in the United States at the time, oh, he was an important man by then, is said to have claimed he had no recollection of ever meeting the family. Now, you know what? I'm fairly sure that indeed he did not have any recollection of meeting the family, of stealing the clothes belonging to their beloved daughter. Because so far as he was concerned, it was all stuff. You don't remember the bolt of material you bought 10 years before to make a jacket out of. Ellen Fairweather, who appears to be a journalist who does not regard her subjects as stuff, unusually enough, said, according to the Telegraph, oh, hang on, it's a bit small here. I'm going to make it bigger so I can read. Yeah, the inquiry into the Diana incident really ought to be expanded to look at other incidents, because if there is a pattern of behaviour here, then there are serious questions around why the BBC saw fit to re-employ Martin Bashir in 2016. And that's Aileen Fairweather's comment. Miss Fairweather, as surely as the government will try to, well, as surely as I am sure that the government will try to impose another lockdown on us before Christmas, I can tell you that the BBC saw fit to re-employ Bashir because, like him, as with Bashir, to them the public is just stuff. It makes shows, and that's as far as it goes. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the Graniopteryx design or Granbo with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.graniopteryx.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share.